But Brandon, let's move on into our, I'm going to say final topic, because the last thing we do on the podcast now is pick the top 25 games of the week for the top 25 teams. And the last discussion that we're having here on the podcast has to do kind of with the NFL draft here early in the college football season. And really this has been, we've already talked about, you guys can check it out on the channel. We've already had the discussion during the offseason about this could be this will be the year of the quarterback. Darnold, Rosen, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen was on the list. You've got Luke Falk with the Washington State Cougars. Told you they were going to get that win over Boise State, Brandon. I told you they were going to beat them.
I'm so upset about that. I am honestly so upset about that. I picked them for the upset, and, Boise State should have won. All I'm saying is they should have won. Baker
Mayfield, Mason Rudolph there. I finished my points, but the quarterback I want to view and kind of microscope right now in this segment is Josh Rosen, because I saw on ESPN they were talking about Rosen. Chip Kelly was talking about him. And I want to ask the same question they asked, and I will ask it to you, just plain and simple. Is Josh Rosen the most talented quarterback in the nation this year? Is he the most talented one in the nation?
Well, if you had to just ask me that, which you just did, through 2 weeks of the season, I'd have to say he looks pretty damn good. He has over 800 passing yards already, 9 touchdowns, and 0 picks. 0 picks. He threw for 491 yards and 4 touchdowns in that comeback against Texas A&M Week 1.
And came back, like you said, and won the game.
Yes, and he did it all without throwing a pick. 35 of 59, he almost threw the ball 60 times. About his last pass, he almost threw his arm with it. But, I mean, absolutely incredible. I know Week 2 is Hawaii, and it's Hawaii, but he has been very, very good. He has not been the guy. However, I did not think that this would be the guy that we were talking about at this point in the season. Very, very early. We're just going to be going into Week 3. I really thought we'd be talking about where Sam Darnold left off and coming in. Darnold hasn't looked terrible, but he hasn't looked what he was at the end of last season. But Josh Rosen, we talked about it, Ricky. Is he going to be able to kind of wake up, get back to form, shake the injury bug, and get things going? And so far, Josh Rosen has done just that.
Yeah, and I mean, the big thing for me through these these 2 games is what you said. 9 touchdowns, no INTs. And this is a guy who, coming into this year, remember when we kind of ranked our top 5 quarterbacks on our draft big board? And I was like, well, you know what? Number 1, I'm going to have Darnold there. Number 2, I'm going to have Josh Allen. And then I'm like, number 3, I'll probably right now put Lamar Jackson. Number 4, I'll put Josh Rosen, with 5 being most likely Baker Mayfield or Mason Rudolph. I even said, I'm like, depends on who I'm feeling better about that particular day. Josh Rosen, to me, if you said to yourself, you know what, I would take Josh Rosen with the number 1 overall pick, I would say, I can't blame you for that. I mean, me personally, let's be honest, although he had a less than stellar game against Western Michigan, I'm still taking Darnold all day, every day with my number 1 pick. Yeah. However, the thing that I think this now plays into, and this is the quarterback big board rankings, I want to say we're only through 2 weeks of the season. There is a long year left to go. But this is the time where we get to overreact about things, and we get to make a big deal out of nothing, usually, with this season. If he continues this play, continues limiting his interceptions, having big rating games, throwing multiple touchdowns in games, I think that he could be the second quarterback off the board. More importantly, because, like we talked about last week, which quarterback who was second on the board coming into the year didn't have that good of a game against Iowa with Josh Allen. And this is something that to me is most impressive about Josh Rosen. Was one of the big question marks coming in was how is he going to respond to after being injured last season with the shoulder injury? It looks like he hasn't missed a step Looks like he
no.
hasn't missed a step, and this is the Josh Rosen that we were expecting to see last year through 2 games.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. And I think the fact that he has looked so good, and you wouldn't have even thought that he was injured last year, that's really, really good, because there's some guys who they come back from injury, they have a whole off season, and they're still kind of timid. There's been no timid with Josh Rosen, and that's been really, really big. I think that goes to show he's fully healthy. That's huge, because if that's the case, that makes everything else on the offense run smoothly. The running game, the receiving game, confidence with the receivers, everything goes really, really well. And even though the defense didn't play well week 1, the offense picked them up. And if they're able to do that throughout the rest of the season, it may be one hell of a matchup between Los Angeles and Southern California.
And we're going to have to wait until November 18th for that one. I know you're talking about the Trojans and the Bruins.
Yeah.
Later this year, that one's on the road at USC. But, I mean, the thing I was going to look at is just even the next 2 or 3 games. Like, this week they get Memphis at Memphis. And not to spoil any of my picks, but I expect a big game out of Rosen again in this one. He's playing Memphis. I mean, if you can put up 5 against Hawaii and even 4 against Texas A&M, he's going to have a big game against Memphis as well. To me, the big one, though, the big question is, can he keep this going and have this kind of a performance? Let's say he does have it this weekend, just for the sake of argument, has another 4 or 5 touchdown game against Memphis. Does he keep the momentum going in the 4th game, September 23rd against Stanford at Stanford?
Well, it's going to be a tough game because it's at Stanford, but we saw what USC was able to do against them.
A quality a high caliber quarterback in Sam Darnold, I'll say.
I think that if Rosen stays on the path that he's going right now, why not? Why not say that he's going to go in there and have a good game? Who's to say that he's not? Because right now, no one's stopping him. Right now, no one can stop him. He is just taking teams to task. So if he plays the same way this week...
Taking teams to task. I like that one.
I mean, he
Hashtag
is.
taking teams to task.
If he does the same thing at Memphis, I have no question in my mind that he can't do the same thing on the road at Stanford.
Well, and I mean, the thing I look at, and I don't mean to compare Darnold and Rosen like this, but if they play well, they're going to be linked in conversations. We're just going to do it. But 21 of 26, 316 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 INTs. I can see a similar stat line for Rosen minus 2 things. Do you know what I'm minusing from the stat line? INTs. I think he has a similar stat line, but just doesn't throw the interceptions that Darnold threw in the game against the Trojans. And looking forward at the rest of the schedule, it's going to be interesting how he plays this year, because Colorado should be a big game. Arizona, I'm still unsure about. Oregon, they're winning me over. They got a big win last week against Nebraska. Washington will be huge. You've got Utah, which is huge. They won the Holy War this week against BYU. And then, of course, you got the game against USC. And, I mean, the big question, this is more the prediction side of it now, is can he keep it up the entire year? And I think there will be a fall off. And when I say fall off, I don't mean like, boo, he's off the cliff and we never hear from Josh Rosen again. And I know what you're thinking, Brandon. I can't replicate that sound effect for you. That was a one-time thing. That was a one-time.
I really liked it.
That was a one-time.
Really
if you ask me to do it again, I'm not going to be able to do it as good as I did. But there will be mistakes. He will throw an interception here. He might have a game where he throws 2 picks in a game, and it's like, wow, Rosen didn't really have a good game. But overall, if he can kind of keep this season as a high-caliber season, we might be having the conversation when we move these conversations over to the onside kick, to where we might have the conversation of, okay, Darnold's number 1. Like, okay, scratch that. 2 conversations. We might be having the conversation, well, you know what? Darnold's number 1, but is Rosen number 2? Or we could be having the conversation, just like we had with Winston and Mariota, of who you going number 1, Rosen or Darnold? And the thing that's more impressive now, these two guys are in the same conference. Same conference. It's not like Mariota and Winston who were on opposite sides of the US of A. No, these two guys in the Pac-12 and will play each other just like Mariota and Winston did in the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think that, it's really an interesting thing to think about. But at the same time, when you said that he might, fall off a little bit, if he has a game where he throws an interception or a couple of interceptions, that can't be the end of it. And that's also kind of how we have to think about Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold had a really kind of tough week 1, and then he still threw a couple of interceptions week 2, but he got the win. We can't be saying, he throws interceptions, so that's going to open the door for somebody else to come in who hasn't thrown any interceptions. Well, you played Hawaii, which don't get too excited that you didn't throw any picks. But in the game against Texas A&M, I think that's the game that's bigger for me. And you had such a big comeback. Texas A&M's defense didn't help, but I think that what I'm saying is that just because Darnold has had a couple of games with a couple of picks and then game 1 where he was pretty shaky, we can't be knocking him off the pedestal saying, you know what, this guy's been perfect so far, so let's put him in the spot. Not saying too that Rosen isn't very good, because I think we are seeing the Josh Rosen that we thought we were going to see last year, but it was cut short due to injury. If he can continue to stay at this pace, which it may come down a little bit, it may only be 3 touchdowns, but
he might actually throw a pick.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
That might be a shocker.
You're never going to have a season where you go through and you don't throw an interception.
Unless you're Tom Brady. Didn't Tom Brady do that, or did he? I believe he had one season where he went clean all the way through, didn't he?
I don't know. I can't remember. That's way back there.
He had a really good season where he only threw, I think, 1 pick. I'm gonna fact check myself while you continue to talk. Go ahead.
but what I'm saying is that we cannot just knock somebody because they've thrown a couple of interceptions and then crown someone because they've been absolutely perfect through the first 2 weeks.
You want to crown his ass? Crown his ass.
Oh, rest in peace.
Good old Denny Green.
But I do think that there's very good reason to shoot him up, a theoretical draft board. You were always have been kind of high on Josh Allen.
Yeah.
I haven't really been there with him.
Well,
he hasn't been the same kind of flashy feeling. I haven't gotten that same feeling as you have. But then again, you really jump out of the gate if a guy just, catches a touchdown. You're like, I like him. No, he's going to be my 4th pick.
The thing with Allen that I liked was I kind of had him pegged as kind of like a Carson Wentz-esque player or a Joe Flacco-esque player. And the thing I mean by that is small-time school could, under the right coach, do good things in the NFL. Like Josh Allen is going to be a project. He's not a guy that, like Sam Darnold, he's the guy in my mind you draft, and it's like he's the future. However, the thing that scares me about that, and it's nothing against Sam, I think I called him Scott 2 seconds ago. I'm sorry, Sam Darnold. But the thing, and it's nothing against Sam, is how many times have we drafted a USC quarterback very highly? Matt Leinart, Mark Sanchez. I don't think he was drafted highly, but John David Booty was also drafted.
John David Booty.
He was on my Minnesota Vikings. Like, how many USC quarterbacks have we seen besides Carson Palmer that have actually done anything in the NFL for long term? And I'm looking at it right now, and the interception that he threw, 0 interceptions. It was last year he threw 2. Last year Tom Brady only threw 2 INTs. That's what I was thinking of. He threw 2 last year, and then 2010 was the 36-4 season. So that's what I was really thinking about. It wasn't 0. But if Rosen goes all the way through with 0 interceptions, that would be impressive. I don't even know if someone in college football has ever done that as the starter of the team. But I want to ask you one thing to kind of put a kibosh on this. I know it's from August 16th, but there were quotes from Jim Mora, who was asked about Rosen and the draft. And here's what he said August 16th. He said, "My firm belief is that he will not leave. I don't think he'll leave. I want a disclaimer. I have an opinion, or I have an option to change my opinion. But as we sit here right now, I can really honestly say I don't think he's going to leave. Brandon, I'm going to ask you. I'm putting you've been Ed Orgeron before. You do a great Ed Orgeron impression. But now I am putting you in the shoes of Jim Mora. 2 games into the year, are you going to hit the button and say, I am taking the option to change my opinion? I think he may leave at the end of the year, especially if he keeps this kind of performance up.
Well, Jim Mora and Josh Rosen, I think, have a very, very close relationship. I think a very close relationship in terms of, even father-son style. So I think he probably has a pretty good idea of where his quarterback is. And if his quarterback is having as much fun as I'm sure he probably is to start this season, maybe he does have a pulse on whether or not he thinks he'll stay or leave. And maybe right now it does seem to be one of those, I think he will stay. But at the same time, there comes a time when if he keeps up the performance that he's been having and at the pace he's been having it, and I know we're only into week 3, but this is why you and I have these wonderful positions, because we get to talk about this, is you start to get agents. You start to get money involved, and you start to get agents saying, hey, you had this outstanding season. You go now to the NFL because we don't want you missing out on any money, which is going to help you be comfortable, help a family be comfortable one day, a wife, kids. You start to grow up really, really fast and have to make very, very, very important yet life-changing decisions very quickly as well. So that all comes into play. But right now, for him to say, I think that he will stay, I don't think that's too far off because of how much fun I'm sure Rosen is having. And especially with the guys, there's something that comes to that too.
The inflatable pool in the dorm. Remember that picture?
That's hilarious to me. I still don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Just shows he's having fun.
I think that if that's kind of the way where you're at right now, that's also important. And if you're there, if that's the spot you're at with the guys on your team and everything, you may not want to leave.
This is going to be a very different. This is going to shock some people that know my opinion. Usually, I am a firm believer of stay in school, get the degree. If you can get the degree a year early, great. But I feel like with Rosen, if he continues to go on the track he is now, just take that. If you're number 1, number 2 in the draft, take that cash money and run with it. And the thing I think back to, and this is what I would not want to happen to Josh Rosen. I'm going to read you 2 stat lines for the year. And after these 2 stat lines, I want you to kind of tell me who I'm talking about here. This was a quarterback, a Californian quarterback, who one year had 3,528 yards, a completion percentage of 69.1, 39 touchdowns, 7 INTs, a rating of 161.2. The next year, he had a completion percentage of 36.6, 3,237 yards, 36 touchdowns, 15 INTs, 157.6 was the rating. He was a top pick, would have been a top pick the first year, wasn't a top pick that next year. Do you remember who I am talking about? He was drafted in the 2013 draft in the 4th round by the Philadelphia Eagles. He was a quarterback for your team last year in the NFL.
Nick Foles.
Not Nick Foles.
No. Chase Daniel.
No, USC quarterback. He is now with the 49ers. Dave used to call him Sparkle Barkles. Matt Barkley. Matt Barkley was that his junior year, people were like, phenomenal season, gonna be a high pick. Decided to stay for that senior year. And looking at the stats, they're not horrendous compared to the year before. However, if you remember that season, that senior season was not a good one for USC and Matt Barkley, where they lost a couple of games more than they did the year before, goes in the 4th round, doesn't get enough money. So that's where it's a shocking position for me, because usually I'm like, stay in school and get the degree. But in this case, get the cash money, especially if you're going to be the number 1 or number 2 draft pick. But I'm going to ask you, any final thoughts, anything that you think we missed talking about Rosen today.
I think we got it.
Well, and this is where you guys come in. Let us know down below in the comment section. What do you guys think? Will Rosen keep up this kind of success all year? If he's going to break down in a game, what game do you think that will be? And how surprised are you that Josh Rosen is having the early success through 2 weeks that he is having right now? Let us know down below in the comment section.